Right now, as you're watching this, your nervous system is running a program that was written before you had words for what was happening. It's deciding how you'll react the next time someone takes too long to text you back, whether you'll pull closer or push away in your next argument. Why certain kinds of people always seem to break your heart in exactly the same way. Most of the time, you don't even notice it's happening. You've been running this program your entire adult life. It has a name. It's called your attachment style. And by the end of this video, you're going to see something that's been operating inside you for as long as you've been alive. Quietly, relentlessly, deciding far more than you knew. The research started with babies. In the 1950s and 60s, a British psychiatrist named John Bowlby became fascinated by a simple question. What actually happens inside a baby when the person they depend on leaves the room? His colleague, a psychologist named Mary Ainsworth, designed an experiment to find out. She called it the strange situation. A mother and her infant would enter a room full of toys. After a few minutes, the mother would leave. A stranger would enter. Then the mother would come back. What Ainsworth was measuring wasn't the baby's reaction when the mother left. She was measuring what happened when the mother returned. Some babies, when their mother came back, were briefly distressed and then calmed down. They went back to playing. Whatever anxiety the separation had caused, the reunion resolved it. Other babies couldn't be soothed. They clung, they cried, they pushed the mother away and reached for her at the same time. And other babies, strangely, didn't seem to react at all. When the mother returned, they ignored her. They kept playing as if nothing had happened, except their heart rates, measured later, told a different story. Internally, they were just as distressed as the criers. They just learned, somehow, at 18 months old, not to show it. What Ainsworth had discovered was that every human being, by the time they could walk, had already built something, a strategy, a template, an internal set of rules for what to do with the people you need most. That template doesn't go away when you grow up. It shapes how you date, how you fight, how you handle silence in a relationship, how you interpret a text that takes 2 hours to get a reply, how you feel when someone you love is sad and won't say why. And most of us are still running the version we built before we learned to tie our shoes. To understand the 4 attachment styles, you have to understand the thing underneath them. Every attachment style is, at its core, a strategy. A strategy for staying connected to the people you depend on. As a baby, you don't have options. You can't leave. You can't negotiate. The adults around you are your entire world, and your survival depends on them paying attention to you. So your nervous system does something remarkable. It learns. It watches how the adults respond when you cry. It notices whether they come close or pull away. It tracks, without any conscious effort on your part, exactly what kind of behavior keeps them engaged and what kind of behavior pushes them away. And then it builds a strategy, a set of default responses wired deep into your nervous system, designed to maximize your chances of staying connected to the people you need. If the adults in your early life were consistently warm, responsive, and reliable, if they came when you cried, if they comforted you when you were scared, if they didn't punish you for needing them, you developed what researchers call secure attachment. Your nervous system learned that closeness is safe, that other people will generally show up, that your needs are reasonable and will mostly be met. But if the adults were unpredictable, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, impossible to read, you learned something different. You learned that connection has to be fought for, that if you don't stay vigilant, people will disappear. So your nervous system developed what's called anxious attachment. You became hyper-attuned to any sign of distance, any flicker of emotional withdrawal, because catching it early and responding fast was the only way to stay connected. If the adults in your life consistently dismissed your needs, if asking for comfort made things worse, if vulnerability was met with annoyance or withdrawal, you learned something different again. You learned that needing people was dangerous, that the safest strategy was not to need anyone at all. Your nervous system developed what's called avoidant attachment. You got very good at being self-sufficient. You learned to handle things alone, and closeness over time started to feel less like safety and more like threat. And if the adults were frightening, if the same person who was supposed to comfort you was also sometimes a source of pain, your nervous system couldn't settle into any consistent strategy at all. because both moving toward them and away from them were dangerous. This is called disorganized attachment. It's the rarest of the four. It's also the most painful to live with because the wiring itself is contradictory. You want closeness and you fear it at the same time. Secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized. 4 patterns, 4 strategies, 4 different answers to the same ancient question. How do I stay close to the people I need? And the strategy your nervous system built as a small child is, for most adults, still running. Quietly, underneath everything. Here's how each of these styles actually shows up in adult relationships. Secure attachment is the one everyone wants. Secure people can be close without losing themselves and separate without panicking. They express needs directly, without testing or manipulation. They can tolerate conflict without catastrophizing it. When their partner pulls back for a day, they might notice it, but they don't spiral. Roughly half the adult population is securely attached, which means the other half is operating from one of the 3 insecure styles. And those 3 are where most of the pain in modern relationships comes from. Anxious attachment looks like this. You check your phone more than you'd like to admit. When your partner takes longer than usual to reply, your mind immediately generates the worst possible explanation. They're losing interest, they're upset with you, they're pulling away. You don't always believe these thoughts, but you feel them in your body before your rational mind can catch up. You're highly attuned to your partner's emotional state. You can usually tell the moment something shifts, but that sensitivity comes at a cost. You often feel things that aren't there. You read tones that weren't in the message. You construct problems out of silences. When conflict happens, you tend to pursue. You want to talk it out, right now, not later. Distance feels unbearable. So you text again, you bring it up again, you ask, "Are we okay?" in a voice that gives away how much you need the answer to be yes. The pattern anxious people often find themselves in, falling hard and fast, then feeling like they're always slightly more invested than their partner. Constantly scanning for signs of withdrawal, reading a lot into small behaviors. Avoidant attachment looks almost opposite. You pride yourself on being self-sufficient. You don't need much from other people, and you're uncomfortable when other people need a lot from you. Close relationships, after a while, start to feel mildly suffocating, though you might not use that word out loud. You're good at being alone. In fact, you prefer it more than is probably healthy. When things get intense in a relationship, when your partner wants to have a serious conversation, when the emotional temperature rises, you find yourself needing space, not because you don't care, but because something in your body registers the closeness as too much. You might have noticed that you tend to find things wrong with your partners, especially right when things are going well. A small irritation gets bigger in your mind. You start noticing their flaws. You tell yourself you're just being realistic, but underneath, there's a pattern. The more serious it gets, the more reasons your mind finds to pull back. The pattern avoidant people often find themselves in: being pursued, feeling smothered, creating distance, and then, sometimes, paradoxically, missing the person intensely once they're actually gone. Disorganized attachment is the hardest to describe because it contains both of the other two. You want closeness and you fear it. You pursue and then you push away. You want to be known, and the moment someone actually sees you, something panics and you recoil. People with disorganized attachment often describe feeling like they have no consistent inner experience in relationships. One week everything feels right, and they're sure this person is special. The next week, without anything really changing, they feel trapped, suspicious, ready to leave. Their nervous system is running 2 contradictory strategies at once. It's exhausting to be in, and it's exhausting to love. Disorganized attachment most often develops in response to early experiences of fear within a caregiving relationship, where the person who should have been the source of safety was also at times the source of threat. The nervous system never gets to settle into a clean strategy because the environment was itself contradictory. The pattern disorganized people often find themselves in intense, chaotic, push-pull connections, frequent breakups and reconciliations, a feeling of wanting what they can't have and not wanting what they have. Here's what almost nobody tells you about attachment theory. None of these styles are flaws. They're not even really problems in the original sense. They're strategies. Specific, carefully calibrated strategies that your nervous system built for you at a time when you needed them. Anxious attachment isn't a sign that you're weak or needy or too much. It's what your nervous system learned to do in an environment where connection felt unstable. Hypervigilance to emotional withdrawal isn't a defect. In your original context, it was an adaptation that worked. You became good at reading people because you had to be. Avoidant attachment isn't a sign that you're cold or selfish or incapable of love. It's what your nervous system learned to do in an environment where needing people led to pain. Self-sufficiency isn't a defect. In your original context, it was often the only strategy available to you. You became good at being alone because being alone was safer. Disorganized attachment isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's what your nervous system learned to do in an environment where the very people who should have been safe were also sometimes the source of harm. The contradictions in your adult relationships aren't a character flaw. They're an echo of a situation that was itself impossible. These patterns made sense once. They were intelligent responses to the environment you were raised in. The difficulty is that most of us are now in very different environments, with partners who aren't our parents, in relationships where the old strategies don't serve us anymore. But the strategies don't know that. They're still running, still trying to keep you safe from a threat that stopped existing decades ago. Seeing this clearly is not the same as fixing it. Attachment patterns don't change overnight. They don't change just by understanding them, but they can't change at all until they're seen. The next time you find yourself in one of those moments, the text that went unanswered, the conversation that hit something older than the conversation itself, the fight that somehow felt like it was about more than what it was about, you'll have language for what's happening. You'll notice the tightening in your chest and you'll know where it comes from. You'll watch yourself reach for the phone 3 times and you'll know what the reaching is doing. You'll feel the urge to pull away and you'll know what the pulling is trying to protect you from. That knowing doesn't solve anything by itself, but it's where every real change starts. Because what was unconscious becomes visible. What was automatic becomes a choice. What was a mystery becomes, for the first time, something you can actually look at. Most of what happens in a relationship isn't really happening in the present. It's happening through layers of old strategy, old vigilance, old patterns of protection that were built a long time ago by a version of you that didn't have any better options. You do have options now, but the options only open up once you can see what's actually running. This channel is going to spend a lot of time mapping these patterns, not to diagnose you, not to fix you, but to give you a clearer picture of something that's been operating inside you for as long as you've been alive, quietly, relentlessly, deciding far more than you knew. Whatever style you recognize yourself in, it's not who you are. It's not a life sentence. It's a strategy. And strategies eventually can be rewritten.